You know, there was a time when playing games on the go meant more than just Candy Crush on your phone. A time when the batteries in your Game Boy were more important than your life support. Take a moment to rewind your mental VHS to the late 80s and early 90s. This was the dawn of handheld gaming, a time when portable consoles were as much a part of a road trip as a bag of salty snacks and a good old-fashioned game of I Spy. First, let's pay our respects to the granddaddy of them all, the Game Boy. This little gray box with its pea soup green screen was a game changer, literally. It may not have had color, but what it lacked in vibrancy, it more than made up for with its vast library of games. From Super Mario Land to Tetris, the Game Boy was like a portable arcade that fit in your pocket. Then, Sega decided to enter the ring with the Game Gear. This was a hefty beast, demanding a whopping 6 AA batteries just to give you a few hours of gaming, but oh, what a few hours they were. The Game Gear boasted a color screen and a landscape design which felt like you were holding an arcade machine in your hands. And let's not forget the Atari Lynx. This was a device that dared to be different, offering games in both landscape and portrait modes. It was a bold move, but the Lynx struggled to find its place in a market dominated by Nintendo and Sega. These were the devices that kicked off the handheld gaming revolution. They brought the arcade to our living rooms, then took it on the road, making every car ride, plane trip, or boring family gathering a potential gaming session. So in the dark ages before smartphones, these little boxes of joy were our best friends, but were they perfect? Oh, far from it. Fast forward a few years and we've got the Sony PSP, Game Boy Advance and Nintendo DS entering the scene. Now we're talking serious gaming on the go. These weren't just pocket-sized arcades anymore, they were multimedia powerhouses, each with its own unique selling points that made us drool. Take the Sony PSP for instance. This was a handheld that dared to dream big. It wasn't just about the games, it was a full-fledged multimedia device. You could watch movies, listen to music, and even browse the web. However, it did have its kryptonite, the battery life. Sure, you could game in style, but not for long. The PSP's battery life was as short-lived as a snowball in the Sahara, which was a bit of a downer. Then came the Game Boy Advance, the successor to the legendary Game Boy Color. Sporting a wider screen and significantly improved graphics, it was like having a Super Nintendo in your pocket. But remember, with great power comes, well, the need for more batteries. The Game Boy Advance devoured batteries faster than a hungry Pac-Man, which was certainly a drawback. Lastly, we had the Nintendo DS, the dual-screened wonder. It was a game-changer, quite literally, with its innovative design and touchscreen interface. It felt like the future. But it had its Achilles heel too. The DS was not backwards compatible with all Game Boy games, which was like going to a party and finding out they only serve your second favorite dip. A good party, sure, but you're still missing your favorite guacamole. So there we have it, the Sony PSP, Game Boy Advance and Nintendo DS. Each with their own triumphs and tribulations, these were the handhelds that made us forget about the outside world. But could they stand up to the test of time? Just when we thought handheld gaming couldn't get any better, along came the Nintendo 3DS and Sony PS Vita, and boy did they raise the bar. Picture this, the year is 2011. The Nintendo 3DS bursts onto the scene, packing a punch with its revolutionary 3D graphics. No glasses needed, folks. This bad boy lets you see the action unfolding in 3 dimensions right before your very eyes. It's like magic, but better. Because it's real. The 3DS also introduced an analog stick for improved control and a nifty little feature called Street Pass, allowing you to exchange game data with other 3DS users you pass by. Talk about social gaming. But it wasn't all sunshine and rainbows. The 3DS had a few hiccups along the way. The most notable? Its battery life, or should we say, lack thereof. With all its bells and whistles, the 3DS drained its battery faster than you can say Super Mario. A bit of a letdown, to be honest. On the other side of the ring, we had the Sony PS Vita. Launched in 2012, it was a powerhouse in its own right. Its piece de resistance? The touch controls. Oh, the touch controls. They made gameplay intuitive, immersive, and downright fun. Plus, with its OLED screen, the graphics on the Vita were nothing short of stunning. But, like the 3DS, the Vita had its own issues. Its biggest drawback was the price tag. Costing a pretty penny, the Vita was a luxury item, not a casual purchase. And let's not forget about the expensive proprietary memory cards. Yikes. So we've had some pretty impressive handhelds over the years. They've pushed boundaries, introduced innovative features, and transformed the way we play. But with their strengths came weaknesses. It's like they say nobody's perfect, not even our beloved handhelds. So which one takes the crown? Well, that's a story for another scene. Now comes the million-dollar question. Which of these handhelds is the best of the best? Strap in, folks, we're going in for the deep dive, starting with the Game Boy, the granddaddy of them all. It had a solid game library, but the battery life was like a candle in the wind. And let's not even talk about the screen visibility. Game Gear, on the other hand, had a colorful screen, but it was a battery guzzler. You'd be lucky if you got through a game of Sonic before it conked out. Next up, Atari Lynx. Innovative, yes, but it lacked the strong game library needed to make it a true contender. And then there's the Sony PSP, the sleek, powerful beast, but it was as delicate as a China doll. One drop and you could kiss your gaming goodbye. The Game Boy Advance was a step up from the original, with a better screen and more powerful hardware, but it still couldn't compete in terms of game quality. The Nintendo DS, however, was a game changer. It brought us dual screens, touch controls, and a game library that was nothing short of phenomenal. Nintendo 3DS took it a step further, bringing 3D gaming into our hands without the need for those ridiculous glasses. The battery life was decent, the game library was strong, and let's face it, who doesn't love a bit of 3D action? Finally, the Sony PS Vita. Powerful, sleek, and with an impressive game library. But it was let down by its battery life and a lack of innovation. So, after careful consideration, the title of Best Handheld Gaming System goes to, drumroll please, the Sony PSP. Why? Well, because it could play films, had a fantastic library of games, not to mention the amount of RPGs, and could connect to the TV with an adapter. Battery was pretty decent with the aftermarket extended battery. Alright, let's wrap this up with a neat little bow. We've journeyed through the dawn of handheld gaming, from the humble Game Boy to the sleek Sony PSP. We've laughed at the battery-devouring Game Gear, and looked back fondly on the Nintendo DS, a system that felt like it had more dimensions than a Christopher Nolan movie. We've ventured into the new era, where the Nintendo 3DS and Sony PS Vita reigned supreme, and we've even had a laugh about how the Atari Lynx was about as popular as a skunk at a garden party. Now let's take a moment to compare these gaming gems to today's freemium mobile games. It's like comparing a juicy steak to a piece of cardboard. Sure, they're both technically edible, but only one gets your mouth watering. So remember, kids, before there were microtransactions, loot boxes, and Candy Crush, there were handheld gaming systems, and they were awesome. Now excuse me while I go play some Super Mario 3D Land, upside down.